Chris Cook and Chief Whip Michael Gove joins me now. Thanks very much for coming in.
Not at all, it's a pleasure.
When you look at the housing association tenants, many of them will be delighted by this offer today. But let's get one thing straight. This is not an attempt to solve the housing crisis, is it? It will exacerbate it by reducing the stock of affordable housing.
I don't think it will exacerbate any problem at all. It's another policy which will contribute to ensuring that more people have a chance to own their own home. It's already the case in the lifetime of this Parliament that we've introduced the Help to Buy scheme and Help to Buy ISAs, which both assist people onto the housing ladder. This is another significant move that will help tens of thousands of people to have a place that they can call their own. And at the same time, it will also liberate resources to ensure that we build more affordable homes and also bring more land into play for more houses to be constructed.
You heard what David Orr said there, that for the money that you're spending on this, you could be building 1 million new homes for shared ownership. He also said private renters will be paying for some lucky tenants to be gifted homes that had been built and maintained for the benefit of the community. The unfairness is obvious. It's striking, isn't it?
Certainly not. Well, first of all, David is not a disinterested party. David speaks up for a particular lobby group that would like a particular type of housing tenure.
It's not just a lobbying group. It's the same as the
Institute. Well, he's opposed, isn't he, to people buying homes. He's made it clear that he's opposed
to the community, which is affordable housing for people that can't afford to own their own homes.
Yes, but what David is not interested in doing is spreading home ownership, and he made that perfectly explicit. Well, we think that it is right that we should spread home ownership. At the moment, it's not fair that if you live in a council house, and you can buy that home, but you live in a housing association property, you cannot buy that home. If we're talking about inequity, which is the point that you made, then what is equitable about allowing someone in a local authority home a discount which no political party wants to remove and not having the same discount apply to someone in a housing association property?
Because you're taking stock away. You're exacerbating the problem, which has got worse. We know that 240,000 houses a home should have been built. They weren't. 1 in 10 has been achieved. And this will make it even harder for people who are not on the ladder, who don't have any kind of home.
That critique would have some validity were it not for the fact that over the course of the last 5 years, we've been building houses.
You built 217,000.
Yes, that's affordable homes. The whole point is...
That's 20% of what you aimed to build.
It's significantly more than Labour built when they were in power.
It's 1 in 10 of what Grant Shapps promised.
No. It's significantly more than Labour built. It's also the case that those 217,000 affordable homes will be augmented, as David Orr himself acknowledged, by the number of housing starts. We're gathering pace, we're accelerating, and it will also be the case that the money that's released as a result of the sale of the most expensive council homes will help bring land into play on which we can build more affordable homes.
Any homes. They don't have any housing to sell.
Well, yes, they do. Lots of councils have housing to sell.
Half of the councils in England don't have any housing to sell.
In your own report, Christopher Cook made the point that we've got enough homes which can come on the market every year as a result of being vacated in order to raise £4.5 billion. And of that money, a significant amount, millions of pounds every year, will bring new land into play. It's also the case that we have... If you allow me to finish, Emily, because you're leaping ahead of each point that I make without acknowledging the validity of each of those points.
OK, let me just acknowledge this validity then, because you're equating two things that don't equate. You don't know how many people that are housing association tenants will want to buy their houses. You don't know how quickly you can force councils, as you say, to sell off housing in order to put the money into rebuilding. You just don't know.
Yes, we do. Because the figures that Chris Cook had in his report are the figures of the number of properties that become vacated, or the top third, the most expensive council house properties that become vacated every year. So that is an established fact. The Department for Communities and Local Government confirmed that. As for the number of people who are housing association tenants who would like to exercise it, we'll wait to see, but we expect that there will be tens of thousands, and the policy is costed on that basis. But let me return to an earlier point that you overrode, and that is that this government has transformed the planning laws in order to make sure that we're building more houses. It has made sure that public sector land is liberated to ensure that we're building more houses. It has a right to buy, a help to buy scheme, which has ensured that more housing supply can be unlocked. And also we have help to buy ISAs, which not only stimulate demand, but also help to unlock supply. And I haven't even mentioned the starter homes that we're allowing house builders to build on brownfield sites that wouldn't be available for other use. And these starter homes are also going to be available to people under the age of 40, some of whom may be currently privately renting. So there are a range of policies that we're putting in place, all of which will help make home ownership a reality. Because the prospect of selling council houses has been an idea that's been in the air since 1959, backed by Frank Field, a Labour politician.
We've talked a little bit about
objected to by
home
some,
ownership, and this is something that clearly you feel has been well costed and well sorted. Let's look at some of your other sums, because in the last few weeks we've had an £8 billion promise for the NHS, £7 billion for tax cuts, 360 million a year for rail fare freezes, 1.2 billion for the 3 days volunteering leave. That's even without Jeremy Hunt writing seemingly open cheques on the radio for the NHS. You end up, by my calculation, rough as it is, with a sum just short of, what, 20 billion, about 18 billion. We're none the wiser where that money is coming from.
Well, we are, actually, because the Conservatives have spelled out in greater detail than any other party where spending reductions will come from. So we're going to cut spending overall in order to help to meet our deficit reduction requirements by £30 billion. That will include £12 billion of welfare reductions, £13 billion of reductions in departmental spending, and £5 billion from the more effective dealing with tax evasion and tax avoidance.
Let's just go back to the departmental spending then, because it seems very easy to cost out the spending, but not to cost out the cuts. We know what's been ring-fenced already. So what is that departmental spending? Just help us through that then.
It's £13 billion, which is broadly £1 in every 100 of what's spent. When I was the Education Secretary...
it's not the NHS, and it could be defence, because that hasn't yet been ring-fenced. It's not going to be international development. Just give people a sense here, because we've only got 23 days to go, and people don't know. They don't have a clue.
I think people do have not just a clue, they have the evidence of what we managed to do in government. We managed in government to make significant savings. In the Department for Education, we reduced running costs by half during the course of the last 5 years.
So this is based on a pledge of what you might be able to do if things go your way?
No, economists have something called express preference, which means look at how someone's acted in the past if you want to see how they're likely to act in the future. What we've done over the course of the last 5 years is significantly reduce government expenditure and at the same time ensure that we've managed to increase spending on the NHS by £7 billion in real terms, plus also in this year increase spending by £2 billion.
But if we look at how you've acted in the past, then we say... You said you'd wipe out the deficit and you haven't done that. You said you'd hit your immigration target, you haven't done that. You got your tax receipts wrong.
But you were changing the subject, Emily.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about your record. When you talk about
we're talking about public spending and we've reduced the deficit by half.
Well, OK, you said you'd wipe out the deficit. So if people are going on what the Tories said 5 years ago would happen in this Parliament...
And it's been quite a successful reduction in public spending, hasn't it?
Patently, you haven't always got your sums right. You've got your borrowing projections wrong.
But you've got you're moving the goalposts with,
I'm really not.
with great elegance and grace.
No, I'm really not.
But you were arguing about whether or not we were successful at reducing public spending. And we have been successful, haven't we? We have managed to reduce public spending. Would you gainsay the fact that we managed to, for example, cut the running costs of the Department for Education by the scale that I mentioned?
I would gainsay that if I was a family who was on welfare, who was desperately worried about disability cuts and where that might come from, I would expect to be told by the party that wanted to be the next government if they were coming down the track or not. You've got 3 weeks to let people know. Do you not trust the electorate enough to tell them?
Yes, we do, because over the last 5 years we haven't reduced spending in supporting people who have disabilities. And I think the idea that any government led by David Cameron would actually make the lives of disabled children or families with disabled members more difficult simply doesn't make sense.
There will be no more cuts to welfare. There will be no more cuts to disability allowance. There will be no more changes to child benefits. Can you say that to us here?
Those are two separate things. Well, three, actually. You've talked about disability and you've talked about welfare. The truth is that there's a huge amount of welfare spending.
At ease now.
There is a huge amount of welfare spending that can be reduced without having any impact on people who have disabilities. We're not going to hit or take money away from the disabled. We're going to protect people who are pensioners. What we are going to do
and child
is to
benefit.
make
Just
sure...
while you're on this one, there will be no more changes to child benefit. Can you say that to us here?
No, I can't say that.
So that could be a place that's going to get cuts?
Well, it's not our policy at the moment, but the thing I would say is that we've succeeded over the course of the last 5 years, not just in making departmental cuts, which I've alluded to, but in making £21 billion worth of welfare cuts. All we're asking to do is to do
So there are some
half of that
guarantees
again.
to some people, like pensioners, but not to other people, like parents. If it's so easy to cost some things and to guarantee other things, why can't you rule out the changes that you will be making and won't be making?
We've emphasised, as I've said earlier, we've emphasised to a greater degree than any party has. Can you tell me any party that's been more detailed?
We're just talking about the Conservatives. This is your time, Michael Gove.
Yes.
We're just talking about your
I know,
party.
but you're asking for honesty, and I'm asking you and the BBC for honesty. Is there any other party that's been as specific as we have? No. We've provided the greatest degree of clarity. Now, we know that, of course, spending reviews occur after governments are formed, and in that spending review, we'll assess where exactly we need to make economies, but we'll do so in tune with the values and the priorities that we've already set out. And if people want to know the priorities we have, they can see the way in which we have absolutely sought to make sure that the disabled and those who have paid into the system all their life are those who are protected. And welfare cuts, welfare savings can come from creating jobs, getting more people off welfare into work, and making sure that the universal credit.
Just one more area, which is in the manifesto, very briefly, it tinkers with the notion of House of Lords reform. Failure to agree that last time round, of course, cost you those boundary changes, which must just seem achingly crazy to your party now. Neck and neck in the polls. Do you look back and say that was the biggest loss, that was the biggest mistake? We should never have let that one get away.
Well, I think the mistake was Nick Clegg's in not honouring his commitment. Nick Clegg said that in return for a referendum on the alternative vote, which we legislated for...
Well, it was about the House of Lords, wasn't it? It's about reform to the House of Lords. If you'd agreed...
Again, Emily, if you actually look at the detail of what was agreed in the coalition agreement, the agreement was that in return for a referendum on the alternative voting system, then we would have reform to constituency boundaries and to numbers in the House of Commons. The Lib Dems reneged on that deal. Now, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk, but one of the lessons that I learned from that is that when you have coalition partners who don't always keep their promises, then a majority government is stronger, more accountable, clearer in what it will do, and genuinely with the electorate, what you see is what you get. So that's why, in this election, people have a choice between a majority Conservative government that will keep its promises, or a coalition of chaos led by Ed Miliband with the Scottish National Party, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, who will betray promises and let down the British people.
Michael Gove. They're calling time on us now, but thank you very much for coming in.
Not at all.